It was a process. It took 3 years. There were, 3 years. Um, what was the process?
We we allowed it to be big at first. We, we laid it out to look at it. You know what I'm saying? And then and realized, at one point we thought maybe it was a two-part movie. It kept morphing. The canvases kept changing until we can just sort of whittle it down to its most beautiful essence. And I think when Roger, and at one point it was so big and we realized it was too academic, it was too dense, it was not accessible to the audience in a way that would make them feel. That was one of our, like, we were riveted by the pages in the book. And so, how do we get that feeling onto the screen? And it was when Roger was able to say, okay, the tree is really big. How do we pull it in? Into, I think when you hit that, the nine myths and
Nine
lies.
lies. So it became about connecting the past to the present. So these needle drops, using popular music, using flashing forward and backward, and really having fun. When we let go of being this sort of strict academic approach to it, and just had fun, and that's where the VFX, the animation, all of that comes to play. And then I came up with this concept of nine lies about black people, and the nine lies became a framework for the film.
What was so impactful in the book was that the printing press, which was a huge technology gain in the past, was the medium in which these racist lies and myths were being purported. And so we wanted to also the imagery, which is what Roger does so well. We went through the archival imagery of our existence, and we realize how much we have all been consuming these lies. So these myths and lies are not particular to one group of people. We are all been ingesting this through a medium, and then to the profound nature of being able to launch this global film in the sort of dismantling of racism is amazing. So I think that's why you see, like you said, animation, and there's so many mediums that the lies were being told, and so we showed it, its origin.
At the end of the day, I wanted the the sort of the messages of the text to be made accessible to people all over the world, and I know that there's certainly some people that will read a 500 to 600 page book, but many people don't have the time or interest. And so for me to think about how you're going to have so many more people being able to recognize ideas that they had consumed as racist and begin to finally throw up those ideas and better connect with black people or themselves. I mean, it just became, it was just exciting. So I knew that the film would be radically different than the book. In order for the film to be great, it has to be radically different. And I trusted these filmmakers to do so.
In the process of making the film, the internal group, we have to talk about these moments as well. And so I shared with the team, and I think the even reason I'm sitting here today, I had to go through my own Phyllis Wheatley moment for you to know who Mara Brockakil is even. And so I have a show called Girlfriends. I pitched it back in the day, and at the onset of that, it was known that though I didn't have the credits to be the showrunner or the executive producer, though I was the visionary of it and I was doing all the showrunner type of work, I also understood that I didn't have the veteran experience to actually run it. I said, okay, great. So it was decided that I would meet with other showrunners, and we would pair up with the idea that in 2 to 3 years I will have the knowledge, and then I will in year 3 I will take over my show, not necessarily getting rid of those people, but just let me have the moniker and the money that goes with with that responsibility. So the show is doing incredibly well. Year 1 we're doing great, but year 2 was astronomically wonderful. And so here comes year 3, and I'm like, okay, it's time for me to be the showrunner of my show officially, and its title and I and the studio head at the time was like, but if it's not broke, let's not fix it. I'm sorry. I was like, broke for who? I said, because we all agreed upon this. This is not. It wasn't like I even came upon this. I saw this coming, and we talked about this, and we knew this was the whole exchange of this. Long story short, they were like, no. And in the end, they were like, no. And I was like, okay. So I went to my representatives. I'm like, guys, come fight this. And there's this moment where you realize you're the only one who's going to fight this fight. And I'm sitting there realizing that, oh, wait a minute. They've gotten what they want. They've got the baby. I've showed them how to do the show. I've been the vision. They will get rid of me. And I was like, okay. So I had to go meet with the head of the studio and talk about why I was important for this work and why I should have for my own work. And there was a moment where, to be honest, I was losing the fight, and I remember in the middle of the meeting, I literally prayed to God. I was like, you've got to help me in this moment. And because he asked me the question, well, who is the better writer? And I was able to say, well, I don't know. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pit another writer against, but what I can say is if I'm not a part of this, it will not be successful. And that moment, you realize you are drawing a line in the sand, and you can still lose the very thing that you spent so much time birthing. I also had to go to my fellow producer, Kelsey Grammer. I had to do the same thing over and over again to take the rightful position of my own show. And I say that to say that I realized if I had not done that, there would be no girlfriends, there would be no game, there would be no being Mary Jane, there would be not a lot of people who've come through the industry who got their first chance. There would not be Tracy Ellis Ross in Blackish and in sort of that. And like when I think about how well she's doing, like her pattern beauty, having to fight for the images of hair, all these things were constant fights. Had I not had my Phyllis Wheatley moment in that moment, had I not sat there through nervousness and the cotton mouth and the near tears to fight for what was rightfully mine.
I've had many powerful white male executives come to me and say, why should we trust you to tell this story? And I would say, because I've won an Oscar and Emmys and Peabodys and I know how to tell story. I have to say that all the time. So I have a bunch of Phyllis Wheatley moments.
I mean, even when I first decided to write the book, Stamped from the Beginning, the first step was trying to get a literary agent. And I got rejected by dozens and dozens of agents. And when I ended up getting an agent and we pitched it to a publisher, Stamped from the Beginning, almost every publisher rejected it. And on both fronts, they rejected it because they didn't believe as an academic that I could write for a popular audience in a trade press. They also thought, because I was in my early 30s, that I couldn't write such an epic, sweeping history. So, I had to sit there and prove myself, prove my worth, prove my capability in order to get Stamped from the Beginning published.